Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. The radio and TV version of the show air in over 12 states. This includes both coasts and Silicon Valley. The show also airs in the UK, Caribbean, and Australia. For full show times, plus past episodes of the TV and radio show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. We just launched a free online community to connect past guests, listeners, and others. This community will allow you to network, chat on Slack, or get help with anything else, and a lot more. If you're interested in joining the community, buying some merch, sponsoring the show, or signing up for the newsletter, please go to buildingthefutureshow.com. I want to invite all of you in the Building the Future community to join me at SUPEX, the Startup Expo in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, this July 26th, where I'll be the MC. SUPEX is one of the largest and best startup conferences in the US and the official gathering of the Building the Future community this summer. SUPEX has cutting-edge content, a cool startup competition, and a half-day forum this year called #WomenForWomen, the largest gathering in the US in 2018 of angel groups, seed funds, and VC funds focused on female founders and female entrepreneurs. For more information, visit www.sup-x.org. I hope to see all my Building the Future friends there. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Skyler Ditchfield. He's the co-founder and CEO at GeoLinks. Skyler, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think you have a really kind of diverse background, and what you guys are doing at GeoLinks is really innovative. But maybe before we get into all that fun stuff, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Fantastic. Yeah, I grew up in a little town called Ojai in Southern California. It's kind of a farming town, about 8,000 people in a small little valley about 60 miles north of Los Angeles.
Okay, very cool. So walk me through, did you end up going to university, or walk me through kind of your educational career?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I went through the regular K-12 there in my town public school system.
Okay.
And had the ups and downs of that in a small town. And after that, I had a brief stint at junior college, which was me just trying to find a direction of where I was going to go in life, and had an opportunity to work for MCI, WorldCom, the dot-com
Sure.
bubble was peaking up in Silicon Valley, and jumped at that job opportunity, which at the time seemed absolutely fantastic in terms of pay, but you didn't realize what the cost of living was up there at the time, so it was a little bit relative.
Sure.
But that's really my formal education.
Sure. Well, I think it's still kind of relative, even today. If people are like, I'm making all this money, and then you get there and you're like, oh, it's really not that much money. Well, it is a lot of money.
That's
it's just
exactly
the cost
right.
of living's too high to compensate. Yeah. So,
That's right.
No, that's fair. So walk me through kind of your journey, kind of in your work career up until kind of GeoLinks, because you've done a ton of stuff. You've had some success and some failures and stuff. So maybe walk us through that journey.
Sure, absolutely. I'd love to. It's a long one. I mean, going back to as a kid, I always had an entrepreneurial spirit.
Okay.
Loved doing anything that I could do to work and make money, whether it was setting up stands to sell lemonade on the side of the road.
Sure.
Doing farmers markets in the summer. In high school, I'd buy things on online classifieds and sell them in the paper classifieds when the internet was new, because there was a nice margin of difference there. But after I left MCI because they were going through their bankruptcy, I came back and I moved back down home to my hometown of Ojai, which was about 350 miles south of San Jose.
Okay.
And I worked for a couple days at a local computer store that had an interesting motto of selling the highest end quality computers at the lowest price.
Okay.
And I thought that was interesting. I was making about a fifth of what I had been making prior, and on my second day at lunch, I went to lunch and I said, you know what, I can do the same business. And I remember, I'm not going back to work. I went home and I did my first flyer, and I had the last $500 I had and put an ad in a magazine and started my first IT company at that time.
Wow. So, okay, keep going, sorry.
So from there, I got a few orders, started doing some service, working out of the bedroom of my bedroom in my dad's home.
That's awesome.
And as that started to take off, I rented a 110 square foot little room from an old music store that had a VHS section that was starting to go out of style, and he made me a deal. If I clean out the VHS room, I could have rent for 3 months, and then after that, it'd be $180 a month.
Nice.
So
That's amazing.
I said, deal. Yeah. Went and rented a truck, grabbed a couple of friends, loaded up all those old DVDs, not DVDs, shoot, VHS.
VHS, yeah.
Cleaned it out, set up shop in this little tiny room, but it was right on the corner of the busiest corner in town.
Okay.
So I love that, and bought a little desk, a chair, as many consumables like writable DVDs and items like that as I could.
Sure.
And our first month in business, we sold $10,000, and I was like, holy
wow,
crap, we're off and running.
That's amazing.
And there was a demand, and 3 months later, the guy said, you know what, my whole shop's going under. Do you want to take over the whole building, which was about 800 square feet?
Okay.
I said, yeah. I had to borrow a couple $1,000s from some friends and family and open up the rest of it, and began that. Right at that time, wireless routers were the first thing out, and I think they were $350 to $450
sure.
at the time, but people were starting to want to adopt that. So we were making a business of installing those and selling computers on the same model of that computer store that I used to work at. High quality parts, but the guaranteed lowest price if you make an apples to apples comparison.
Interesting.
And that business really started to grow for us in that small little town. There was definitely a need and demand, but there was a perception of anything in that town being more expensive than driving out of town. So we had to fight that uphill battle.
Okay.
I found, doing a really good quality of service meant a lot because word of mouth in a small town was super important.
Sure.
And we began running ads on what was Adelphia Cable at the time up there, and they had these small regions where we could target basically our town and the next town nearby.
Okay.
And the cable buys were very inexpensive, so I think I was spending in the neighborhood of $500 to $700 a month and flooding TV to the point that when I'd sit up at night, all I would do is see myself on TV. And it led to a couple interesting things. Number one is, like, everywhere I went in town, everyone's like, hey, you're the guy on TV, which became moderately annoying and embarrassing to me.
Sure.
But the positive outlook was for 2 years straight, our business doubled every 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And that was great. We ended up pushing out into a 3,500 square foot building a couple of years later, approaching a little over $2 million in revenue for a little town like that, which was really exciting. Won our first big RFP, which big for us at the time was about, I think, $250,000, going up against other entities that had worked for the government, and we hadn't. This was for a community college. And I really wanted to continue to take the business to the next level. My partner at the time wanted to go in a different direction, moving towards smart homes, because the housing bubble had not hit yet, and the housing market was going crazy. So we had a little different difference in direction. This was around 2005, I want to say.
Okay.
And he had the means to buy me out. I didn't have the means to buy him out, so he bought me out of the business at the time.
Okay.
I moved on and took a little break to regroup and see where I wanted to go next. And I started a internet service provider because I had looked back at what we had done, and I saw, we'd serviced 3,000 clients, and I thought, wow, if we could have turned that into recurring revenue instead of one-time transactions, we could have built a huge base of recurring revenue that we didn't have to work for month over month.
Sure.
Unfortunately, that business venture, there was some partnership issues, and it ultimately didn't work out. And I had some significant health issues at the time after that business had just gotten off the ground. And one of those learning lessons where you get into a lawsuit, and even if you prevail, you don't really win.
Yeah.
But you get some good life lessons there.
Sure.
So that business, that took another year and a half or 2 years of my life and a lot of money and time. And then I had a little bit of funds left over still from my prior sale, and I made the mistake of getting seduced by the idea of a nightclub.
Okay.
And I went in and bought a 50% share of a nightclub business where I thought, it's going to be 3 nights a week. That's all I'll have to work. A lot of cash, great income. I'll have time to pursue other business efforts, and this seems like a slam dunk. And being in my my mid-20s, there was an allure to it as well.
Sure, fair enough.
Turns out the seller was not a real honest guy. He had cooked the books.
Wow.
The business was in a massive decline. It was in a huge issue with the local police. Turned out the second week running it, the PD calls me down, sits me down for a meeting in their HQ and says, we had 194 calls for service last year. You guys were only open 190 days. I'm like, oh, Jesus.
Oh, wow.
You know, and they want to impart all these new rules on us of doubling security, doubling staff. Well, it turns out it was the most violent nightclub in town, and it was an absolute mess.
Wow.
So they gave me an ultimatum to clean it up or shut it down.
Okay.
And by cleaning it up, we started losing a ton of revenue.
Sure.
So before you know it, I'm in lawsuit number 2, and we ended up prevailing. But again, you know, you don't really prevail even when
Sure.
you win. You still lose money and a lot of time. And I moved on from there, and I had some health issues again. I had an autoimmune disease since I was about 18 that had flared up again.
Okay.
And I was pretty much down and out at that point. It was, I think, 2009. At that point, I was living in the spare room of my dad's house again. Had moved back home with my girlfriend at the time, and I was trying to figure out what do I do next. You know, what do I do? I was doing little odd jobs here and there to make a living, of just, you know, putting $20 in my pocket to eat for the day.
Sure.
And I was entertaining the ideas of, do I take a job? I was thinking, do I want to become a policeman? That was one I was taking very seriously. And something in the back of my head kept saying, you can't work for anyone else. You can't work for anyone else. But the other part of me says, you got no money. Your credit's blown.
Sure.
You're just getting back on your feet health-wise. You sold off every item you had to get by. How on earth am I going to get a business started again? And I finally came across a ad for an IT company for sale in LA that a 50% partner was selling, and I was going back and forth trying to figure out a way to make that work. I knew I had some leverage in the fact that it was a 50% sale, which is not attractive to most people because it's very difficult to sell 50% of the business.
Sure.
And the one partner was getting more and more motivated to depart, and they really wanted someone that they knew they could count on to run the business properly, and I think I gave them that pitch. It was right around that time I learned my daughter was on her way, and that was a big motivating force to really, really push this through one way or another. So
Sure.
my grandmother stepped up and gave me a small loan to put a small amount of money down, and I got the seller to finance 95% of the price.
Wow.
Got that business going, and within about 5 or 6 months, I was able to look at everything that the previous partner that I bought out was doing and take that down from a 40-hour-a-week job to about a 10-hour-a-week job by just automating and streamlining a lot of the processes.
Wow.
And I asked the other partner, you know, can we grow this? Let's make this big. I saw the opportunity to really grow it, and he just didn't have that vision. He was a guy that really just wanted a steady paycheck and not much else.
Okay.
So that really kind of fast forwards us into where we got to GeoLinks. Was one day I drove up to visit my dad. I was living now in Ventura at the time, having a nice income stream to live at least comfortably. By no means wealthy or anything along
Sure.
those lines, but I was comfortable with my fiance and my daughter. And I pulled out my cell phone, and I remember seeing all these Wi-Fi signals that had my cousin's phone number on them.
Okay.
And I called him up. I said, Ryan, why do I see 15 different Wi-Fi signals with your phone number on it in town? He goes, oh, I built this wireless network. I said, well, what are you doing with it? He's like, I'm serving internet to rural communities way in the backwoods of Ohio that don't have other internet. And I said, well, that's really cool. And communications had always been something we were interested in. We built networks since we were kids together.
Interesting.
So I asked him how much money he was making, and he says none. And I said, well, wait a minute. Didn't you spend a lot of money building this? It isn't taking you time to do it? He's like, yeah, my credit card's maxed out, and it's really neat, and I'll figure I'll collect some money from him at some point. I said, well, Ryan, you want to make a business out of this or not? And he said, yeah. I said, 50-50 partners, you ready to go? And he said yes. So 30 days later, we had,
Wow.
I think, $4,000 a month in recurring billing. I started putting the business side together, and I began driving around putting flyers on mailboxes with my daughter in the back seat, my wife in the passenger seat, and we're sticking flyers on mailboxes. I'm picking up my cell phone as we're doing it, taking orders, and we were selling to just rural residential areas, replacing satellite services at that time. And the business was growing and growing, and we were turning every dollar back into the business that we could. Then we heard of an opportunity for a wealthy community about 25 miles away.
Okay.
That was about 800 homes that had no internet service.
Wow.
And these people told us, like, look, if you can get in here, you can make a killing. Well,
Okay.
It was the wealthiest neighborhood with a bunch of A-list celebrities, and we ended up picking up a lot of well-known names in the entertainment industry as clients as things moved along. But I just started cold calling. I called the development corporation, the HOA. I just endlessly started calling. Finally was able to get myself a meeting. I had to go in there and represent ourselves as being bigger than we were, because they had a real fear of a failure of execution and how bad that would look on on their community of wealthy individuals. So
Yep.
I also had to be honest. So that was a tricky balancing act, but I was able to pull it off. I was able to get us a 10-year contract to go in there. So the next problem I had was I don't have the money to build the network.
Oh, interesting.
So we went around, begged, borrowed, and stole. No, we begged loans off of every different family member from that we knew that we could, and we were able to put together about $140,000 in loans.
Wow.
Built that network out, and in 3 months, we had $30,000 a month in recurring revenue.
Wow.
So that grew really quick for us, and that was really kind of the next launching point that got us to the next level in terms of cash flow to be able to really grow the business. So from there, we moved it into LA, which was our ultimate goal, was to go to a business-to-business model and get away from the B2C model. And that began taking off for us pretty quickly. And the growth trajectory that we were on, I think this is about 2013-ish now, maybe closing into 2014, I could see that our capital expenditures were exceeding the amount of cash we were taking in. If we wanted to keep that growth trajectory, we needed money one way or another. Okay. And I'd never raised capital or anything like that before, other than, borrowing money from friends. But we needed a lot more than that to continue to grow, and I certainly didn't want to turn down that growth trajectory. So I started making phone calls. I started looking at my customer base and looking at who lived in wealthy homes and introducing myself and asking, do you have an introduction? And I actually Googled one of our clients that was really nice, and I saw that he used to be a private equity guy, and he was retired, and I started talking to him, and he said, hey, let's go to lunch. And he introduced me to an individual who actually ended up becoming our first investor. And he's still an investor in our company. He's our chairman, and we've become good friends and had a really, really great relationship. Before that, I did get pretty involved with one PE kind of family office, and we got very close to a deal. It was a good valuation at the time, but something just didn't quite feel right about it for me, and they had changed a couple of the deal terms last minute. And I decided to walk away, and we ended up getting a better deal just a few months later with this other guy. So, I'd say always trust your gut. So from there, we took that capital and began investing that into our growth and kept growing the B2B side of our business. Recorded 100% growth every year for the next 3 years after that. Kept pushing, expanding that greater LA area footprint into Orange County, the Inland Empire, all those surrounding areas. Really, we're going head to head with the big guys, which was not a model you find usually with the small providers. The small providers usually try to pick off the low-hanging fruit where there's no competition. But, I said, if we're going to make this and we're going to make this a big company, we need to learn now how we beat the big boys at their own game. So let's go into downtown LA. Let's go into downtown Orange County, Santa Monica, and let's win. And we were doing that, and it was by providing a better quality of service. So that continued and just kept building the company up. We moved the company originally out of my weight room where we started it in my house.
That's amazing.
To a 100, once again, about 110 square foot little unit I rented for $150 a month with no windows, and there were 4 of us stuffed in there sweating with fans blowing on us all day. And we were very happy to move that into about an 800 square foot facility not long later, which we then quickly grew out of, and I moved into a building that I'd had my eye on since I was a kid. It always it was right on the 101 freeway.
Okay.
For some reason, it always just stuck out to me. So when I saw that it was for rent, I said, we got to get our way in there. So I went over there and began negotiating. I was able to negotiate the biggest sign right on the 101, which is a huge lit sign, which for me was just something that gave me the feeling of, hey, we've made it to the next level.
That's awesome, man.
And that was about a 5,500 square foot space. So yeah, that was a fun little accomplishment. Not, fast forward another year or two, and we're outgrowing that building pretty quickly. So we took a little more space on it and could not negotiate a deal with the landlord that worked out for us, and ended up moving last July into a new 40,000 square foot facility.
Oh, wow.
That is pretty much my dream building, which has a kind of a little bit of a funny story behind it. We were looking for buildings for for quite a while, and I was on with a friend of mine who gets like Clippers and Lakers basketball tickets, and he was down in Argentina at his house, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I was just flipping through my emails. I said, "Oh, we're looking at buildings, and I'm just looking at this one that we can't afford, but it's amazing. It's got a basketball court inside the building, a game room, a movie theater, all this stuff." And he goes, "Wait a minute." He's all, "There's only one building in this county with a basketball court inside." He's all, "That's my friend's my old business partner's building." I said, "Yeah." He's all, "Well, what can you afford?" I said, "About half of what they're asking." He's all, "Give me 20 minutes." And he just hung up the phone. He calls me back. He's like, "You really want that building?" I said, "Yeah." He's all, "Go meet him right now." And I went, and he was a really great guy that had sold his video game company that he had built out of that building that he built himself. And he really liked us, and he made us a deal that was about 45% off what he had been asking for it.
Wow.
To get us in there, and we moved in last July, and it's really, really an amazing building that's really helped, build the culture that we want here.
That's
great. We've now moved into the government sector in terms of building rural networks away from our original urban core.
Okay.
And we've built out we've got 38 projects going for rural schools across California right now.
Wow.
Building out to rural libraries like out on Catalina Island.
Oh, wow.
We do a lot of wholesale to other big ISPs. AT&T buys from us now, Verizon,
wow.
CenturyLink, a lot of guys like that. We're moving out of the state, working on different projects for anchor institutions like, again, hospitals, schools, libraries. We ended up being the biggest winner for RFPs for the California Telehealth Network in California this year, winning about 120 hospitals.
Wow, that's huge, man. Congrats. Breaking into that market is tricky.
It is. And, I found out, interestingly enough, is all kind of, other than responding to the RFPs and having the best solution, it's about having the relationships. And
totally.
I've just networked a lot within that area to educate them that we can do what we say we're going to do. And we're not going to be one of those guys that screws you over and tells you one thing and, over promises, under delivers. We want to do the opposite, under promise and over deliver.
Sure.
So, we've seen a ton of growth, and we've done a couple acquisitions this year, which has helped grow us, and we're looking at another really significant one right now that I'm hoping to hear some news back on tomorrow, actually.
Oh, wow.
And it seems like we've kind of hit that tipping point now where things are really pulling us out of California into other areas across the country, and we've bid on 15 different states.
Wow.
In the Connect America Fund for about $250 million in subsidized funding from the FCC,
wow.
which we're hoping really, really pulls our trajectory forward. And we're working on a lot of items in the government space that would help kind of reform the way funding works. So in rural America, you've got funding for schools, for telemedicine, for libraries, for residences, et cetera. And we've got a proposal that we've put forward to the FCC that's getting some traction of making a demo city of consolidating all those different funding silos together and doing one build out that would reduce the cost by about 60% and the build out time by about 60%. and really, push forward this closing the digital divide across America by, being more strategic in the way we build network out there. And then we'd hope to replicate that if we get the green light here pretty soon to do that. So that's kind of the quick story of how we got to GeoLinks and where it is today, and where it's going next. We've got quite a few things in the pipeline, but we're always open to what may pull us in the right direction, and we want to stay nimble enough that we're able to go take advantage of new opportunities when they present themselves.
No, I think that's really great, and I want to dive deeper into GeoLinks in a second. But I'm curious to cover one thing you mentioned about the new building. And you don't have to discuss all the details, but just for the listener, I'm curious to know why he gave you such a good deal. Was his kind of main reason because it's better to take in some money every month instead of having no tenant, and in the hopes that you guys would grow to actually use maybe the whole space so he could charge you as close as much as possible to what he originally wanted? Or what was the reason he let you in at such a really good deal? I know your buddy, obviously helped you, but, at the end of the day, sometimes it comes down to dollars too, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to speculate a little bit. So I met with him, really nice guy.
Okay.
Serial entrepreneur himself that had done very well for himself on 3 or 4 different transactions over the years. We kind of hit it off and, became quick buddies, so to speak. And he really liked, what we were all about and what we were doing and how much we loved the building, because I think it was kind of a passion project for him himself.
Okay.
And I think it came down to 2 things. I think it came down to, one, like you said, getting his company that had been bought was getting outsourced and moved away. So his income stream for the rent there was moving, and we could come in right away and provide no gaps. So
right.
You know how expensive gaps are in real estate.
Sure.
So giving us a deal that we could afford to get in was probably smart for him. But I think he did cut us a little bit of a deal just because he liked us, liked what we were doing, liked our entrepreneurial spirit and where we were going. At least, I want to tell myself that at least.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's for sure part of it, right?
Yeah, and we took the whole building, so we have excess space absolutely at this point, but I don't want to move again. So while we're paying more than we really should for a company at our size today, having moved 4 times in 6.5 years at that point, you don't want to do it again with the growth trajectory you're on. So he made us a 10-year lease, and there's some escalators in there every year. So over time, it does get closer to what I would say is a market rate. But he'd really like us to buy the building at some point as well, and that probably would make sense for us in the coming years as soon as we have a little more free cash to work with, and that makes the most sense. So I think those are the deciding factors really in how it shook out.
But I think that's also good advice for people listening, right? Is you never know unless you ask, right? I guess at the end of the day, he could have said no, or he, you guys both worked out a deal that worked for both of you. But I want to dive a little bit deeper. You kind of covered it, but I really want to dive a bit deeper into kind of what GeoLinks actually does for the listener, because I think you guys are doing some stuff that's really innovative in the space. So do you maybe want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into what exactly you guys do?
Absolutely. So the business is multifaceted. I mean, all-encompassing, we're an internet service provider and telecommunications company. So we provide fixed wireless services to businesses all across Southern California.
Okay.
Urban, suburban, rural. We look at projects that are custom, whether that's building out for the state parks department into really difficult to reach areas.
Okay.
Like I said, we were the biggest grant winner for network construction the last 2 years for schools, reaching schools that had these grant dollars for over 5 years, but the big providers could not get there in an affordable way. So we go out. We're a general contractor. We do everything from land procurement to the tower construction, to permitting, to logical and physical design, ultimate operation, so a complete turnkey deployment, and have really been able to solve problems in a cost-effective manner that others haven't. That's gained us a lot of recognition within the research and educational community. So I got pulled up to a meeting in a couple months to present into the research and educational networks of Washington, Montana, Hawaii, Michigan, Oklahoma, and Kansas for similar type projects as well. So and then, from there, we've gained a bit of influence within the FCC too, and that's helped drive certain agendas. And I sit on a board for the school's healthcare library broadband coalition out of Washington D.C.
Wow.
And we're trying to help influence policy change as much as we can for the mid-sized guy like ourselves.
Sure. And then is the also kind of another stream is do you sell back the infrastructure to the big guys?
So we don't sell the infrastructure back. We lease connectivity.
Okay.
So
okay. I guess that's kind of what I meant.
Telecom,
okay.
Yeah, telecom's an interesting business, and a lot of people that haven't been in it don't understand that your competitor is also someone you do business dealings with.
Right.
And so while we compete with AT&T, we buy from AT&T. AT&T buys from us.
Gotcha.
While we compete with Verizon, we buy from them, they buy from us. Now you'll find some really small companies get defensive and don't want to do that, but they're really missing the point of how this industry works, and that while we may compete on a deal head-to-head, we're ultimately going to be buying from each other where we don't have network,
right?
And mutually benefiting one another. The funny thing is sometimes we'll have a deal come in on our retail side, we'll have it come in on our wholesale side, and we have another side of the business which is agents out there, and it comes in on the agent side. And we've got the same deal in 3 different channels of the business, and it's funny because I'll go, okay, well, some other provider may win it, but they're going to be buying it from us anyways. So we kind of win, regardless there. And the funny thing was, even on the hospitals bit I was telling you about, a big regional provider that's probably about 20 times larger than us, approaching $1 billion in revenue, was won, I think, about 50 of the 200 and some locations. We won about 120. But it turns out they're coming to us to buy all those locations through us now.
Interesting.
So it's kind of funny how that all works out in the end.
Sure. Yeah, no, that is interesting. So I kind of interrupted you there. Let's kind of cover some more of the stuff you guys do, because I think the hosted voice stuff is kind of fascinating to me, because that seems to be something that the entire industry is kind of struggled with a bit, just actually keeping it connected compared to kind of traditional phone lines.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first started out, we were in the voice over IP space.
Right.
We were selling it because our customers were demanding both.
Mm-hmm.
And I quickly realized that we couldn't do both well. We needed to focus on one or the other just because of our size. So we actually stopped selling the voice services, and we kept probably 80 legacy clients, and we focused on connectivity.
Okay.
This last year, I realized we can't keep ignoring that. We can't keep telling people no when they're demanding a product from us that has good margins and is complementary to what we're selling.
Sure.
So we acquired a small VoIP company. We've had some struggles in that integration. We're finally smoothing those out. And the problem has been for us right now is re-educating our sales staff that we are a voice and connectivity company now, that we do both. And in the agent side of the business, there's a side of telecommunications where there's agents that are out there that sell on a pay-per-performance model.
Okay.
And there's a lot of companies that do just voice over IP that are well funded beyond us, and they pay really well to those agents to acquire clients.
Okay.
So we've been learning the ins and outs of marketing voice, where it's been a little different than marketing connectivity. But another thing we found was originally when voice over IP came out, it was hot. It was much cheaper than plain old telephone service, and everyone was selling it, but no one paid attention to set up the right quality of service, and a lot of people had bad quality in their phone calls, and it actually turned a lot of people off, turned a lot of people away, and thought it was an inferior offering. Now it's finally going back to the direction, but when you deploy it, and we're making it mandatory in our deployments, you need to deploy proper edge devices like routers and firewalls that handle quality of service. And we're actually using SD-WAN products now and dual links. So you either buy a single link from us and a single link from another carrier, or we provide a primary link and a 4G failover link, and they can do some really neat things on those boxes now that allows them to split the bandwidth up over both. If one of the circuits is having a little bit of an issue,
Right.
that prevents you from having any call quality issues. So the technology and the software behind the technology has really evolved where as long as it's set up right, call quality should never be an issue anymore.
Interesting. Yeah, and I guess like having call quality and kind of a backup internet, especially in kind of the medical space. I worked at the hospital at the university up here a number of years ago, in their media department, and we had to like video conference all the time to like around kind of the province. The quality of video and audio sometimes was so bad that it was just, you almost couldn't have a conversation because, every third word dropped the call or the video cut out. So, when you're dealing with something where it's life and death is maybe a little dramatic, but sometimes in the medical space,
right.
like you're having an important call where people really need to get something through. So, the internet can't go down, that there can't be, the call quality needs to be good, right?
Yes, that's right. And obviously there's a number of factors to that of, the upstream providers you use, because when you're going over the internet, let's say you're in Nevada and I'm in California, and there's multiple junctions to get there, and
right.
It's what's called peering. And one of the issues a lot of people don't realize is the peering connections between certain providers can sometimes become congested. And if you don't have multiple routes and redundancy both at your data center head end, those congestions can then cause call quality issues. And this is where a lot of providers or a lot of businesses used to buy what's called MPLS and basically private circuits that were dedicated between different points to ensure that call quality. Now, the cost of those was anywhere from 3 to 6 times more than a normal internet circuit, but it basically guaranteed you the quality because it was dedicated all the way from one end to the other. This is where people are now going to SD-WAN, is because you can now buy 2 internet circuits, and it will intelligently look at and monitor those circuits at all times. And if one of those is having an issue, it can resplit the data packets or over both of them or direct them to one or the other and really alleviate that. And you're able to get the same level of quality of a MPLS circuit or a private network circuit at about half the cost.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I always wondered about that because that was always it still can be sometimes where you're in certain places and you're trying to make a call and you can tell there's like a huge delay and it's just the conversation just awful. Yeah. That's quite interesting. So you guys also do temporary internet. I'm sure most people at this point have been at some event where there's Wi-Fi and it's not great or not usable at all. So how do you guys kind of do that differently?
Yeah, so we do a lot of event services. We've done major celebrity type parties,
Sure.
Everything from events for Microsoft, things at Angel Stadium,
Wow.
Dodger Stadium, and those pay a lot of money for a short period of time because they need a large amount of bandwidth, and it's expensive to tear down and put up equipment in a short period of time. When it comes to the Wi-Fi and the distribution, so you can definitely have an issue that you don't have enough bandwidth for everybody there.
Right.
But there's things that have to be done in the distribution of the Wi-Fi, of handling the proper handoffs between users. Really, it comes down to that local network, that local wireless network deployment. And a good example is a hotel that we did a couple of years ago. We provided the internet to.
Okay.
And another company built the wireless network in there, and they had endless problems, and they were blaming us. And we're looking at the circuit and saying, you're not even using all the bandwidth. It's not us. Our bandwidth is clean, and you're not using it, but people had problems. So I went and stayed there at the hotel myself. It had become such an issue, and I saw the problem was they had way too many access points installed, and the access points were interfering with one another and stepping all over themselves. And therein lies the issue. You need enough density, but not too much density. You need channel separation in terms of the Wi-Fi channels. And then you need a good product when it comes to the Wi-Fi product that will handle the handoffs.
Right, like hardware, you
mean,
right?
Different access points as you move around. Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
No, that is quite interesting. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, I'll tell you, more often than not these days, I still see a lot of places, whether it's hotels we're staying at or areas that we go to, that those distributed Wi-Fi systems are not set up properly and not done right. I think a lot of people are investing money in fixing them now.
Okay.
Definitely, there's a lot more hotels that have really good working ones where you can do voice over IP on Wi-Fi with no problem and use it well. Four Seasons has it down, I'll tell you that, but they've got a lot of money to spend, so they do it
Sure,
right.
sure.
Marriott seems to have theirs down pretty darn well. They've got a one as well, but some of the other brands are still working it out. You know.
Okay. So, and I'm curious about like, well, tell me if I'm wrong. I guess is like, say you're doing a trade show. Is it easier to run kind of wired internet to every booth and then let kind of the attendees have kind of Wi-Fi, or is that kind of a little bit archaic of a setup?
No, that's probably about right. So
Okay.
for us, we actually don't get involved in the local distribution.
Okay.
We really just bring in the internet pipe, and whoever their vendor is, an IT company, something along those lines, then takes that and spreads that Wi-Fi out.
Oh,
If you
okay.
ever heard of the traveling show, it's a spin-off of Cirque du Soleil called Cavalia.
Yeah.
The horse
Yeah.
show. We do their internet all across the country through various different methods, and have been doing them for a number of years. And
Interesting.
they were one that struggled with that Wi-Fi deployment in terms of they were doing it themselves initially and had some problems and wanted to bring us in to help. And I said, we're willing to help, but that's just not our business model, and we don't kind of want to get pulled into that. But they were able to perfect it in time. But again, it's about really getting that down and getting it right. And the setup is a little tricky. You need to know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, I can imagine. No, that's interesting. So the other thing, you guys do a bunch of other things as well, but I'm curious about your kind of on-demand scalable cloud. How does that kind of work, and what exactly is it?
So when we put in an internet circuit, there's excess capacity on it, and because we're so flexible, so say you bought a 10 megabit circuit from us,
Okay.
you can give us a call, and we can turn that bandwidth up in a number of minutes and increase that for you. So it's not something that's asked for that often, but it is a really nice feature when you can put that order in on an AT&T fiber circuit, and it could take you weeks to a month to have that go through.
Sure.
And then, there are people that want to overbuild their circuit, like say we'll build it to a capacity of 200 or 300 megabits, and they may only subscribe to 20 or 50 today, but they want to have that immediate scalability because they're kind of looking forward to their future, so they'll pay a little bit more upfront to have that option that they can just turn a knob and basically, so to speak,
No,
with
sure.
a phone call and get it turned up.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, especially kind of on the startup side of things. Like if you get a ton of traffic, you want to be able to hit the button to like get more, not have to wait days or weeks, right? When it's kind of useless to you
Right.
at that point, right? No, that's quite fascinating.
Exactly.
So is there anything else that you guys kind of do that we haven't really covered yet?
Network construction is really a big piece for us. So building
Okay.
network, we began working with a group that just handles hospitals out of Texas recently, and
Okay.
they're bringing us now deals all across the country
Wow.
where there is either not enough terrestrial infrastructure or the price to deliver on terrestrial infrastructure is just prohibitively high. So
Okay.
we're doing a project out in Kansas for about six hospitals, and I wouldn't have known this today, a few months ago, but I know it today.
Sure.
What we're selling out there, in comparison, in downtown LA, it would cost about $500 a month
Okay.
for the speed of circuit. What it's going for out there is $5,000 a month,
Oh, wow.
and that they find a great deal in comparison to what else is out there. So I started poking around, and there was one phone company that kind of owned the whole area, and they were just gouging people.
Okay.
So while we had to charge that much because we had to go there and build network, and the cost will come down as we begin to get those assets paid off, it's amazing what some things still cost in rural America. People don't
Sure.
realize how limited connectivity is, and in many areas there's a city we're doing a project for out in Michigan right now that actually has no internet, no cell service.
Wow.
And they don't have enough regular old plain phone lines even to service the town for dial-up purposes.
Wow.
So they came to us for building out for them too. So we kind of look out for different projects. We're involved in a project with a group out of University of California, San Diego, and University of Nevada, Reno, on fire sensors.
Okay.
And they've built these fire sensor networks that use a combination of cameras and meteorological sensors that have been able to track and predict wildfires with 100% accuracy over the last few years. And we're putting together a project to pitch, to the state of California that would really fix the under and over response to fires back in the backwoods, but also give the predictability of where those fires are going, where you need evacuations, where you need to trench lines to stop them or deploy resources, etc. And they've been doing this, like I said, for quite a while. But what they came to us for was, we've got rural connectivity across pretty much every inch of California now, and they need that bandwidth out in the really rural areas. And we build solar and wind powered towers that can sit on really remote mountaintops and then provide that connectivity back and visibility that then allows the airplanes, the trucks, the helicopters, and the ground crews to respond accordingly.
Oh, that's really cool. Not the fire part, but that you can detect all that stuff, right? That's actually really interesting.
Yeah.
So
it was very interesting to me. I didn't even know they had something like that out there until I met them recently.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. So I'm curious then to maybe get your thoughts on some things, because you've had some kind of ups and downs in your career, and you guys have grown kind of geolinks, really fast and kind of across the country. What advice would you kind of give to, younger people looking at maybe not even necessarily getting into this space, just kind of, as an entrepreneur, because you seem to have done a ton of stuff, obviously, to compete and work with kind of some of the bigger guys. So what advice would you give some people that are kind of maybe starting up or coming up?
Good question. So, when I first started my IT company, I did well with that because that was a space I knew well.
Sure.
And really could execute well on myself. I got a little burned out on it, and I tried to go a different direction as I talked to you about, and that didn't work out well for me. I'd say stick to your core competencies, stick to what you know and do well. Secondarily, you need to be able to sell your product.
Okay.
You're going to be the salesman when it starts from ground zero, because I'm betting most of you don't have much money when we start out.
Right.
So if you got to be able to sell your own product, you got to be able to kind of be a jack of all trades and do everything as you get off the ground and live really inexpensively to start. Whatever you think the turnaround point is going to be, and you're going to start making money, double or triple that time frame and make sure that you can make it to that, because it's not going to be as fast as you think. Third item I would say is learn your accounting.
Okay.
You're going to need to do all the accounting yourself from the get-go, and even as you grow, you want to be able to check the work of those people that you hire. And I've trusted some people that I hired with high six-figure salaries to be CFOs or high-level accountants for me that have done poor work and really cost me a lot of money. And
interesting.
I should have been checking on it more, and it forced me a couple of years ago to dive in. And while I had a loose idea of general basic accounting, I didn't know the deep dive stuff that you get into when you really start doing bigger transactions and deals, and it forced me to learn all that and some of the financial planning and analysis. And now I can double check all that work. I can do my own projections and forecasting. Not that I want to do it all the time.
Sure.
But I think, your cash is king. If you run out of cash, you're screwed. Even at our size, it's difficult to get bank loans because of our growth trajectory. And it's going to be a long time before you're going to get any kind of traditional financing or capital.
Right.
So I would say plan for that as well.
Interesting. So you mentioned, obviously, some of the technical side, and you mentioned kind of the sales side. Do you have any advice for people that are maybe early on, like you were, actually being the salesman and the other, doing all the other stuff as well? Because I think sales is probably the most daunting part for a lot of people. I would put myself in that category as well. So do you have any advice for people that are maybe not traditionally salespeople to actually go out and sell their product, especially at the beginning?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you know it's a good product and you know it's benefiting your customer, that's going to come across genuine. So
Okay.
as long as you can communicate with that and you know you're actually providing a service that's benefiting them, I think your client is going to read that. Even if you don't think you're a good salesperson per se, or you don't have that personality, you're going to have to force yourself probably into some, moderately uncomfortable situations. We always do in business, whether
Sure.
it's sales or something else. But trust in yourself, and if you know your product's good and it's going to benefit them, don't be afraid to go out there and do it.
Sure. No, I think that's really good advice. I'm curious though. You've kind of mentioned this throughout the show that you're kind of constantly learning and staying up on stuff. Are you reading kind of any good books, or do you try to read some books a month? I know some people say like I try to read a book a week, which can be very difficult. But like, do you find you're constantly learning, and how do you kind of go about staying constantly learning?
Yeah, great question. So I've never been a huge book reader in my life. I read part of Think and Grow Rich when I was sick. I don't have a lot of time to sit down and read. I read a lot of articles. So I'm always reading articles. So those are short and quick reading. I'll do research when I have a specific item I need to solve or something I need to learn. Then I'll dive in and utilize the internet and do a lot of research and reading there on whatever that specific topic is that I'm trying to take in at that time. But I've probably read 2 books in the last 10 years when it comes to books. So I'm not a big book person, but I'm more of a.
I think that's good advice,
I call
man.
myself a researcher.
Sure.
Yeah. Research when you need to learn something, and then go in. I mean, you may read 100 pages, so it might be a book.
Sure.
When it comes down to it. But, that's how I've approached it myself.
No, I think that's really good advice. Like, I've always kind of found the 10 things that successful people do every morning lists. I'm kind of like, okay, sure. Like, that's great and all. But,
right.
But like, that's partly why I wanted to get your thoughts on that question, because sure, if you want to read a book a week, read a book a week. If you can't for whatever reason or don't want to, there's other ways to do it, right? Like, to your point a second ago, and I kind of just wanted to stress that. But Skyler, we're coming to the end of the show. So is there anything that you maybe kind of want to mention before we kind of sign off, and then maybe give the listener some places where they can get more information about you guys?
I mean, there's more information on our website, www.geolinks.com, geolinks.com. You can Google us or Google my name, and definitely, significant amount of articles and information comes up. But I think my last piece of advice to entrepreneurs that are starting up or aspiring is, it's a harder path than you think.
Sure.
Don't get discouraged. Plan for adversity. Live lean. Every time things start going your way, it's not going to continue going that way forever. You're going to have to. It's not like you all of a sudden made it. You're going to have a lot more challenges ahead of you, and every time you get to kind of the next threshold in size, you have to reinvent yourself, because what got you from $0 to $100,000 is going to be a different game than gets you from $100,000 to $1 million,
Sure.
and then $1 million to $10 million, and $10 million to $20 million. I found, through all those different thresholds, we've had to reinvent the way we do things. You outgrow your staff, you outgrow your systems, you outgrow your processes. You've definitely got to be in a place of continual learning. You're going to forfeit vacations for years. You're going to forfeit a lot of that, but you're going to be, the master of your own destiny, and that may come with failure, and that may come with success. So you got to have a strong gut for that stress and that risk too, I would say. But don't let that shy you away. Just be prepared for it.
No, I think that's really good advice and a really great way to end it. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate being here and sharing my story. So it was my pleasure.
Thanks, man. You have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Okay, bye.
Great. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for listening. To join the free community, buy some merch, sponsor the show, or sign up for the newsletter, please visit the website at buildingthefutureshow.com. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.